What happened to the people? What happened to the Pokemon? Where did Professor Tangroth get those glasses? Did Tangroth murder its trainer? On the surface, Pokemon Pocopia seems like a warm and cozy Animal Crossing-like Pokemon game. However, there could be a story much darker lying behind it. Sup nerds, Mitch here. This is the dark story behind Pokemon Pocopia. Alright, so to piece this story together, we're going to be referencing the reveal trailer, the extended Pokopia trailer, and also the official Pokopia website. So you play as a Ditto that's taken the form of a human, but not just any human, you take the form of Ditto's trainer, former trainer. I say former trainer because we find out later, after talking to Professor Tangroth, that not only Ditto's trainer, but all humans have disappeared. Tangroth says something along the lines of, this is a place where humans and Pokemon once lived together. He then goes on to say that he hasn't seen a human or a Pokemon in quite a long time. So what happened? What happened to the people? What happened to the Pokemon? Where did Professor Tangroth get those glasses? Did Tangroth murder its trainer? So what happened in Pokopia to make it look like a barren wasteland? Now a possibility is just like a natural disaster. I mean, Groudon and Kyogre exist. They both control land and sea, so this could be like an alternate or like a future timeline where Kyogre and Groudon once again battle, turning the land into a desolate wasteland. Or this could be an alternate timeline where Lysander gets his wish and creates a perfect world probably being one without humans. I mean, we also did just get a game with him in it. Now, these are possibilities, but my gut is telling me that it's actually something else. War is not an uncommon thing in Pokemon games. While we haven't seen an actual war break out, it has definitely been referenced before. In fact, there's a fan theory of a war including the Kanto region where I believe this game is set. And if you want to see how I got to that conclusion, I want to leave a link to a video right here if you want to watch that. Now, I'm not saying that Pokopia is the result of the Kanto War, but Lieutenant Surge does mention it. So this does mean that war is a possibility and exists in the Pokemon universe. Also, the lack of greenery and the lack of like overall life makes me think that this was like a nuclear war and the bomb was dropped right here. To go deeper, this could have been a war between people and Pokemon. The reason I say that is because of what Professor Tangroth says right here. He mentions that he wants to see a world where Pokemon can live peacefully again, but says nothing about wanting to see the humans again. We know that Tangroth was alive during the time that humans walked the earth, so for him to kind of just like disregard them completely when mentioning wanting to rebuild the Kanto region kind of leads me to believe that he witnessed them do something incredibly terrifying. Or was Professor Tangroth the one behind it all? Professor Tangroth is already showing like signs of like human characteristics. I mean, he has like the glasses and stuff. He's using like a stick as a pointer. And yeah, just overall, he's like, acting like a human, kind of like the animals do in the Animal Farm book. Now, it's unclear if humans are gone from the entire world or if they're just gone in the Kanto region. Regardless of if the cause is war, natural disasters, or anything else, there are signs that life once flourished here. Like, take a look here. There's a Pokemon Center that's been turned to rubble. There are what seems to be sidewalks and roads. During the reveal trailer, Ditto is in a cave that contains a wheelbarrow and a book in it, and some wood as well. Maybe someone was living there, like a homeless person or something. I mean, we do know now that homeless benches are canon in the Pokemon universe, so maybe a cave was the next best thing. So the humans are gone pretty much because of nuclear warfare. So what happened to the Pokemon? Potential radiation from the nuclear war has kept crops and other living things from thriving in Pokopia. Now, there's obviously still Pokemon that exist in the world. Due to the nuclear warfare that's happened here, pretty much all Pokemon and their trainers have been killed. Now, as we go through the Pokopia game and add new things to our world, new Pokemon start to show up as Pokopia becomes more habitable. Familiar species of Pokemon are still around and are pretty much unchanged, aside from like Bulbasaur using Leafage, which it can't learn. But there are a few Pokemon that have undergone some sort of change. These Pokemon are known as peculiar Pokemon. So I have Mosslax, which is a Snorlax that has been asleep so long that moss has started to grow on it. Smearguru is a Smeargle that has pretty much just painted until it's become a master painter. Pikachu, the description just says it's a weird looking Pikachu, but I think it's just like the soul of a Pikachu who's pretty much dead and still linked to this world. And then of course we have Tangroth, which is just our humanoid professor looking Tangroth. which we'll get into Professor Tangroth a little later on. Something that ties like all 4 of these Pokemon together is that this is what could potentially happen if a domesticated Pokemon was left alone without a trainer. Moslax has just slept to the point where he grew moss. Smearguru just kept painting and painting and painting. And Pikachu, like I said, kind of just died. And it's waiting for its trainer return, so its soul is still linked to this world. Tangroth, like I said, we'll get into that. So these 4 Pokemon once had trainers, but they all passed away due to the war. So what about Ditto? We see it come out of its Pokeball at the beginning of the reveal trailer and take the form of its trainer. But why now? In my previous video that I talked about earlier, I discussed the time period in which this game is set. Hint, it's far into the future. So there's no trainer to send Ditto out of its ball, and it kind of just teleports there. So we know that once a trainer catches a Pokemon and they already have 6 Pokemon in their party, that 7th Pokemon that they caught gets transported to the PC. Now, I'm under the assumption that the PC system that Ditto was in had finally failed, and the default for when that happens is for those Pokemon to go back to its trainer if there's space in their party. Now, how would the PC know where the trainer is? Easy, the Pokédex. So the PC finally crashes, and Ditto is transferred to the location of its trainer's Pokédex. The fact that Ditto was in the PC in the first place leads me to believe that Ditto's trainer had already had 6 Pokemon in their party, so those Pokemon were either released or died alongside Ditto's trainer. Ditto's trainer's Pokédex was lying on the ground in the cave during the reveal trailer, meaning it was Ditto's trainer that was living in this cave the whole time. Whoa. So why did it take Ditto so long to come out of the PC, even though it was destroyed long ago? So let's assume, like I said earlier, in this war, the Kanto region was the only region that was affected by this war. The Kanto region actually shares a PC system with the Johto region, that being Bill's PC. So while physical PCs in Kanto are destroyed, the system is still getting updates from the Johto region. The updates eventually get to the point where they can no longer support like the older PCs, so any Pokemon on the old system were released. Kind of like when Pokemon Go ends support for an old iPhone, you gotta either upgrade or you just die. So this means that there could be other trainers' Pokemon roaming around Pokopia, like the peculiar Pokemon. Also in the games, when a Pokemon is sent to a box, it kind of just goes into cyberspace where I'm assuming time just like stops and like doesn't move. So that would explain why Ditto remains unchanged after all this time, while the other like peculiar Pokemon have aged, because those peculiar Pokemon were already outside of their Pokeballs after their trainers have passed. So the Kanto region was subject to war that left all humans and a ton of Pokemon dead. Professor Tangroth wants to rebuild the Kanto region to make it a place where once again Pokemon can flourish. The point of the game is to rebuild this desolate land and make it lively once again. But what happens after we rebuild the Kanto region? Like I said before, we can assume that humans are still around, just not in the Kanto region. They do still exist in other regions though. Humans are a greedy and ever-growing species, so after rebuilding Kanto, I'm sure people from Johto, Hoenn, etc. would love to inhabit the Kanto region once again. I mean, humans kind of already are roaming around the Kanto region with all the human-like Dittos running around, so now we have Pokemon with human-like characteristics ready to defend their new home, and we once again see a war between humans and Pokemon. Pokemon Pokopia, or rather Pokemon Dystopia, is just an endless cycle of war, death, and recovery. Okay, now to answer the final question, where did Tangroth get those glasses? Dude, Tangroth totally murdered its trainer, for sure. Pretty much all of Tangroth's dex entries talk about how it uses its vines to ensnare its prey. And according to Bulbapedia, Tangroth may be based on the swamp monster from the short story It by Theodore Sturgeon, which is ultimately revealed to have formed around a human skeleton. Professor Tangroth is just wearing its trainer's skin. I told you the story was dark. Does that mean Professor Tangroth was the catalyst that led to this catastrophe? Is Professor Tangroth really the antagonist of this game? Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Love you. Bye.